Welcome to the ride with Wild Wayne Cartwright, an exciting thrill ride through the wonderful world of HBCU athletics. Before our trip begins, let's set a few ground rules. First, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Second, hit the like button. Third, please be sure to tell someone else about this show. Now that we've got these things out of the way, it's time for our journey to begin. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your ride.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the ride. And what a wonderful ride it is that we had this weekend. So Wild Wayne is here. We're going to take you on a nice little ride tonight. Kobe Orr, he was supposed to join me tonight, but he had an emergency come up. So I'm going to get him on the show next week. All right. So before we get going tonight, I want to make sure everybody hits the like button. Everybody also, if you are just joining, you've never watched before, welcome. And also, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. All right, so let's get right to it. You know how I do on Sunday Recap. It's time to fire it up. And let's go through the montage. Ready? Let's go. In Fayetteville, Arkansas, my team took the field for the very first time in the Sam Shade era. They started off down 7-0. But then it was a nice drive that Quad Brown took him down the field. Nice rushing TD for Maurice Edwards IV. Then it was 7-7. And then TDs from Taylon Green later. And just flexing a little bit of that SEC muscle, Arkansas takes its opener 52-7 over the Bulldogs. It was an impressive first half, though, for the Bulldogs. Something that you have to build on and like as you move forward. All right. The Bulldogs, they go back home to take on Alcorn in a non-conference matchup for their home opener in the Louis Cruz Classic. And in Lubbock, it was a long night for those UAPB Golden Lions. They were down 47-0 at halftime, and Baron Morton and that offense ran up 610 yards on the Golden Lions. So this was a game that you knew was going to kind of go this way, and Christian Peters managed to throw a touchdown a little bit late in the game to avoid a shutout. UAPB goes down by 60 points in this one, but, you know, they gain a nice little paycheck, and they gain some experience. They stay on the road next week to go play Central Arkansas. In Shreveport last night, Grambling, they got their season started with a win over NAIA Langston. Zayt set 20 out of 25, 3 touchdowns, and they held the Langston Lions to 97 total yards in the process. Aiden Hooper added a late touchdown for the Lions to avoid a shutout. 55-7, the Grambling State Tigers get on the board this year, 1-0, but you see where they're going next. They're coming right up here to my neck of the woods to take on the soon-to-be number 1 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. $1 million, though. Have fun. It was the very first game in the tenure of former FAMU head coach Willie Simmons with those FIU Panthers. They took on a very familiar foe that he knows well, Raymond Woody's Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. It was a struggle all night for the Wildcats, giving up 6 rushing touchdowns to the Panthers. Keon Jenkins was serviceable, 187 yards in the air, but really it was about that rushing attack for the Panthers. Tim McClain in his debut, 18 for 28, 164 yards, but they could only really muster those 3 field goals. So for Bethune-Cookman, they stay on the road. They get another payment game by a team that's getting ready to kick it off here shortly, the Miami Hurricanes. Good luck, Bethune-Cookman. Morgan State hit the road against South Alabama. Now, these boys, they battled really, really hard. This game was pretty close for quite a while. But South Alabama flexed its muscle in the second half, pulling away from what was a close game and made a little bit of breathing room. Bishop Davenport, 2 touchdowns passing. Kentrell Bullock, 2 touchdowns rushing. Was the difference in this game, which also, you look down, you see those 4 turnovers, 3 fumbles and an interception. Stopped a lot of momentum that Morgan State was building. Jason Collins, your preseason MEAC Offensive Player of the Year, 24 rushes, 83 yards, and 2 touchdowns. A solid opener for Morgan State. Now they return home to take on Towson. It was the initial game, the debut for Deshaun Jackson and those Delaware State Hornets. They hit the road to stay in state to take on the Delaware Blue Hens. Now, if you didn't see this game on Thursday night, you missed a good one because Delaware State, they competed for full quarters in this ball game. Nick Minicucci, 251 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and 1 rush TD. He was the difference for the Blue Hens in this game. They just couldn't quite shake the speed and the athleticism of the Delaware State Hornet offense. Marquise Gillis stood out in this one. 17 rushes, 123, and a touchdown. Caden Bennett, new quarterback from Sacramento State, kind of struggled a little bit in the passing game in the second half, but still, this was an impressive performance from the Delaware State Hornets. Now, they go back home for their home opener and take on Albany next week. And another one on Thursday night. This one generated a whole lot of buzz. I'll talk about this one a little bit later in the recap. Alabama State, full 4-quarter battle. Had a 28-17 lead at one point in the third quarter over UAB. Andrew Body was the story. 312 yards for 4 touchdowns in the air. 119 yards on the ground himself. He had help. Jalen Jones, 6 receptions, 174 yards. But in the end, it was a little too much Jalen Kittner and a little bit too much Javon Jackson on the ground. 520 yards of offense for the Blazers in a 52-42 win. Alabama State next week, they stay on the road. They play a non-conference game at Southern. And this was one of the big shockers of the weekend. This one went down on Thursday night. Northwestern State Demons had not won a game in over 1,000 days. They come out, they take advantage of several mistakes, 15 penalties and 3 turnovers by Alcorn State. They snapped a punt over the punter's head that led to a touchdown. Jalen Tolbert threw both of his interceptions in the end zone in the red zone. It was just enough for the Demons to get it done 20-10 in an absolute stunner. We'll talk about this one a little bit later. Alcorn State going to stay on the road, going to come to play Alabama A&M in a non-conference matchup, but they got to pick up those pieces down on the reservation. Last night, North Carolina Central home opener down there in Durham. Looked like Ricky Santos had his Wildcats ready. Matt Vezza, first start, 10-17, 186 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. On the night, Walker Harris struggled, only 13-33 passing, 172 yards in the air. Chris Mosley, though, another 100-yard game. But in the end, 27-10 Wildcats. 1-1 is the record for the North Carolina Central Eagles as they hit the road to play Old Dominion next week. And it was the debut at home for Michael Vick on Thursday night as they took on the Towson Tigers. In the end, it was a little bit too much of Pete Shinnick and his crew on offense. True freshman Andrew Endorf, 14 out of 26, 187, 3 touchdowns. It was just too much on the ground, too much in the air. They just really didn't have any answers until it got a little bit late in the game. They started Israel. Israel at quarterback. He didn't look very good. You brought in Otto Coons. He moved the team, but in the end, it was still a lot of struggles. 27-7 Tigers for Norfolk State. They stay at home. They get Virginia State coming into their house next week. In a thrilling game down there in Orangeburg, South Carolina State struggled for most of the game to shake the Wofford Terriers. But in the end, Ryan Stubblefield found a way to get it done on the last drive, throwing a game-winning touchdown to Burgess with 1:29 remaining to pull out a 16-15 win. But in the process, 69-yard field goal on the very last play, 16-15. South Carolina State gets their season started with a win. They go on the road to play South Carolina next week in state, in a game that many of us saw on SWAC TV, or at least attempted to try to see on SWAC TV. Southern gets in the win column against a very game Mississippi State Delta Devil team. Cam McCoy came in the game after Jalen Woods left with a very nasty head injury. 82 yards in the air, rush TD. Jason Gabriel, 97 yards on the ground in the TD. Welcome, Darren Morris. He catches a touchdown pass. Kelby Givens, welcome to you too. 2 sacks. Josh Brown, if you hadn't seen him, check him out. Josh Brown was very good in this game for the Delta Devils. He pretty much was most of their offense. 2 touchdowns passing, 87 yards on the ground. Southern next week hosts Alabama State in a non-conference game. Valley hits the road to play Tarleton. Tarleton just beat Army, y'all. Good luck, Valley, but very impressive in the initial game for Terrell Buckley. In Nashville, this was a very good game between 2 first-year head coaches. Reggie Barlow for the Tigers, Sean Gibbs for the Aggies. Tennessee State, they had Kendrick Grimes, who transferred from Southern. 2 long touchdown runs, 21 rushes, 174 yards, made the difference. Braxton Thomas, he was helpful for the Aggies, 169 yards in the air and a touchdown. In the end, it came down to a 38-yard field goal attempt with 6 seconds remaining as the Aggies tried to tie the game, and Tennessee State blocked it to get off the field with a 24-21 win. Now Tennessee State, they welcome the reigning FCS national champion North Dakota State coming to Nashville next week. In North Carolina A&T, they go down to Orlando and take on UCF. In another stunning game, Orange Blossom Classic, Howard HU gets it done 10-9 over the FAMU Rattlers. In this game, Tariq Stark started, threw a touchdown, led a game-winning drive down the stretch. I'll talk about that coming up here. Matt Connard, game-winning walk-off 43-yard field goal to break the hearts of FAMU Rattler Nation down there in Miami. R.J. Johnson started at quarterback, had his struggles. This was a tough one if you're a FAMU Rattler. This is jubilation if you're a Howard Bison. FAMU hits the road next week to take on Florida Atlantic. Howard does the same at Temple. Jackson State, it wasn't pretty. Hampton came to play. They stretched them out as far as they could for a 4-quarter battle. This game was once tied with 7 minutes remaining at 14, but Ahmad Miller with a 74-yard touchdown run broke the tie, and they ended up going on to winning this thing 28-14. Jacobian Morgan was a little uneven in the passing game, 15-30, 143 yards, but that defense stood up when they needed to, forcing 3 turnovers from Hampton. Hampton was not outdone, though. Isaiah Freeman, 117 yards passing and had a touchdown. And he had 94 yards on the ground. Good game to watch down there in Jackson. Jackson State will go to Southern Miss next week. Hampton will go home to host Elizabeth City State. And then last, but certainly not least, it was a Labor Day Classic. This one, wow, what a finish if you didn't see it. It happened real late at night because this game was delayed by an hour and a half by lightning. Prairie View on an inspiring drive down the stretch led by Cam Peters throws a touchdown to Rodney Ojo from 6 yards out, from 17 yards out as time expired. As you look, they outgained Tennessee State 418 to 255, but look at those penalties, kind of set them back. KJ Cooper threw what he thought was a game-winning touchdown to Rorion Richardson with a minute remaining. He was 11-16 for 132 yards and a touchdown. So Prairie View, they go home with a victory, and they take on UT Rio Grande next week in their home opener. And Texas Southern got to pick up the pieces as they hit the road to play Cal. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the rundown. And what a rundown it was. Woo! We take a breath here for a second. So if you're just joining, make sure you hit the like button. All right. Now, we'll go through this whole thing here. We'll go through a few of these games. Good evening to you. Yeah, Will Wallace said, Valley let me down. He said, Wayne sounding sounding like ESPN. Hey, man, we here doing it, man. We here doing it. We here doing it. All right. So I'm going to start here tonight. I'm going to start with this game. And this game right here was crazy. All right. Prairie View had so many opportunities through this game. Really, they both had opportunities. We know about all the trash talk that took place throughout the week. We don't have to go back into that. But for the game itself, Cam Peters, he started, and he was doing pretty good. He was throwing, and thank you, man. Like the stream, people. Thank you. Threw the ball very effectively. They also ran the ball well. As you see, they outgained Texas Southern 418 to 255. Now, there were a lot of penalties called in this game. Just, obviously, when you see opening games, that you're going to see a lot of penalties in the forms of some false starts, certain things that goes along with, maybe illegal formations. But there were so many pass interference calls in this game. It was crazy, right? There were offensive pass interferences. There were defensive pass interference. They had it all, okay? But I just want to just say what was impressive about this game was how it went back and forth in those final 5 minutes. Now, KJ Cooper, he led those guys on a 12 play, 88-yard drive, all right, to take the lead when he threw that touchdown to Rorion Richardson to take the lead 21-16, and there was 1:16 on the clock. So you're thinking 1:16 on the clock. You're thinking that Prairie View gets the ball. You're thinking, wow, Tremaine Jackson probably going to have to log off of social media. My boy Lionel probably was going through it. All the PV fans probably going through it. I'll admit, I sat there. I was looking at it. I thought that, well, this surely has to be it here. But then Cam Peters said, no, not so fast, my friend. As we salute to Lee Corso right there. He said, not so fast, my friends. He rallied the troops. And here's what the final drive was, right? After a penalty, speaking about all the penalties, they were backed up on their own 6-yard line, okay? 109 to play from the 6-yard line, okay? 21-16 down, 6-yard line, got to go 94 yards. You're thinking, like me, probably not going to happen. But then Texas Southern's defense fell asleep. And Prairie View was right there to take advantage. There was some real questionable coverage as to what was being played. The drive starter was when Peters hit Ratliff for 30 yards. And when he hit him, it was pretty much single coverage over the top. And made some of the guys I was chatting with, they were like, what the hell coverage was that? So I'm thinking, okay, 30 yards, they're at midfield. Okay, at this point, there's about maybe 45 seconds left. They're at midfield. And you're thinking, wow, okay, Texas Southern, you just got hit with one. You'll buckle down. Then the next play, Peters hits Bingman for another 22 yards. Okay, so now they go 52 yards in 2 plays in over 20 seconds. So now after they hit Bingman for 22 yards, now they're in the red zone. And then what happens after that gets even more crazier, because then in the whole sequence, you've got holding and you've got a pass interference. And then the pass interference, you thought that Prairie View had won the game the first time. But then it was a pick play that was offensive pass interference, which was a pretty good call by the officials. So now You're looking at last play of the game, 6 seconds left from the 17-yard line. And you're thinking, okay, Texas Southern probably has it now. And I was sending texts. I sent a text to my guys, and I said, if you're Texas Southern right here, you play zone defense and you rush 3 guys. Pretty much, that's really what I was thinking. Zone defense, rush 3 guys. Instead, it looked like there was some confusion because it ended up looking like it was man-to-man on that last touchdown to Ojo. Threw it right behind him, touchdown, ball game, walk-off, 22-21. In the end, Prairie View, give them all the credit because for where they were, the adversity that they had, they found a way to get it done and get a win. And even in the end, when they were interviewing Coach Jackson was just standing there. He looked relieved, looked like he had been through a war just physically and mentally. And they asked him, they said, hey, Coach, how do you feel? He said, man, I'm just trying to process what just happened. I think we all were trying to process what just happened. But at the end of the day, man, shout out to Prairie View. They get a win. They avenged the loss that they had to Texas Southern last year, and they start 1-0, but also importantly, they start 1-0 in SWAC play, which is important because for where they're trying to get to and for all the things they said they're trying to go, you really needed to win this game. And on the other side, if you're Texas Southern, boy, you're going to go play California next week, a game that you weren't expected to win anyway. But now you're 0-1 in the standings, and this is something that, obviously they were up for this game. They talked a whole lot about this during the offseason. A lot of talk. Now you got to rebound the troops. But regardless of what happened in this game, no matter who the winner or who the loser was, you still got to get better. Tremaine Jackson even said, we've got to clean up things. And yeah, they do. 15 penalties for 159 yards. You gotta clean that up. And especially when you outgain these guys by almost twice the yardage. If you commit maybe even a third of those penalties, we're not even talking about a close game here. Let's keep it real. What's up, Jared Lott? I see you watching. He said for TSU to have 40 new players in Prairie View, this is the first time they played. Yep, all will be fixed. And that makes my point for there. You get yourselves together here, Prairie View. You go for it. You get yourself together, get yourself refocused. You get to go home. You play UT Rio Grande. They just joined the FCS. They had their first game in the FCS yesterday. You get your home opener, get in front of those fans, get off to a good start in front of them. Hey, we'll see how it goes. Bigger games ahead, but great job, Prairie View. Great job. Great job. All right. So that is that game. Now, the next one I got to go to this game, man. Boy. Wow. For those of you that saw my show on Wednesday, you saw that I had this one 28-10 FAMU. I thought that FAMU was the better team going in. I thought that for pretty much most of this game, they were the better team. They didn't execute. A lot of drop passes. RJ Johnson did not look settled at all. He was pretty rushed out of the pocket. He was making some tough, bad decisions at times, making some bad reads. It was a little bit difficult. But for most of this game, for about 58 minutes, Florida A&M, they had this game won with their defense. And then that same defense that had allowed them to stem the tide and keep it close until they were finally able to take the lead at 9-7 when Daniel Porto kicked his third field goal of the game, then things get crazy. So on the last drive where this thing started to get nuts, and I was watching this thing live on ESPNU, and I just absolutely was dumbfounded by what I was seeing. And if some of you guys that saw this game along with me, you probably were dumbfounded at some of the same stuff that I'm getting ready to say here. Howard's last drive, All right. 3rd and 19 on their own 16-yard line. Again, inside, just over a minute to go. 3rd and 19. Okay. Third and 19 on your own 16. And they send a blitz. And Tariq Starks hits Mosley for 21. Okay. Gets the first down, extends the drive. But then the next 3 plays, okay, Starks to Mosley for 21 yards. Next play, Starks to Eden James for 14. Next play, Starks to Smith for 11 yards. Okay, they gained 46 yards in 30 seconds. And here's the consistent thing about all 4 of these plays. FAMU blitzed right up the middle. Left the middle of the field wide open all 4 times. And all 4 times, it was either a slant or halfback choice route. Halfback choice route that Eden James ran. And the crazy thing, Eden James is arguably their best player on offense. How do you let him get free is beyond me with the game on the line. 46 yards in 30 seconds. All right. And they get down there and it sets up Matt Connor to hit that game-winning 43-yard field goal. All right. But what I also want to get back to for FAMU, that vaunted running game that was spoken of. Thad Franklin and Bo Somerset, you saw, held to 89 yards rushing. It was a full-out struggle on offense for FAMU. But also what added to the struggles that they had on offense. At the end of the first half, it was some of the most biggest display of what not to do in clock management. Right there on the edge of field goal range. Again, your kicker hit 3 field goals in the game. You let the clock run all the way down, and then you call a play, and then instead of throwing a deep pass, you throw a little 5-yard pass. Gets tackled, half runs out. And people's like, what's going on? How you let the half run out? And also, red zone. On the very last drive that FAMU had the ball, when they kicked the field goal when they were down 7-6, they kicked a field goal to go up 9-7. They had the ball right there on the doorstep of the goal line, could not punch it in. If FAMU gets a touchdown there, we're not having this conversation. Probably not having this conversation. But back to the drawing board, FAMU. You guys got to figure some things out here. Because if RJ Johnson, he won your quarterback battle, and if this is the best you got, if this is how he's going to play, you're going to have some real serious issues. And also, if you're James Colsey, this is where you coaches, they're really going to get paid now. You got to really show how you value, what value you have for what they're paying you. Because now you got to be able to fix stuff. And not just being able to fix stuff, you got to be able to fix it when the fans are definitely on top of you now. If they weren't on to you before, they're on to you now, brother. And if you're Howard, this was a big win for Coach Larry Scott. You needed a win like this, brother. And shout out to Dr. Kanisha. I know you're watching. The Howard grad. Big win for Howard, because not much was expected from them this year. But this is a game, man, they went down there and they stole this one. So shout out to Howard, man. FAMU, back to the drawing board. All right. Let's get another one. Let's talk something else. All right. So we got this one here. All right. Southern goes on the road and they play Valley. Okay. Now, one thing I want to make very plain and very clear to everybody, you'll probably see that ESPN had this as a conference game. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a non-conference game. Okay. So just in case anybody wants to go back, wants to say, hey, ESPN said it was a conference game. Don't get in any arguments with anybody. This is a non-conference game. Okay. And also, just so you know, the game that Southern's going to play next week against Alabama State, that's also non-conference too. Okay. So with all that said, this game right here, I want to start, and I want to say to people, some folks, because I saw out there people said, well, don't let FAMU losing distract you by the fact that Southern struggled at Valley. Listen, this is not the same Valley team that's from the past. Now, obviously, we know Valley's history. We know their history. We know that they have not won a lot of games, and they've never won the SWAC in football. We know this, okay? But what I mean by it's not the same Valley team. This is not the same Valley in 2025. And not the same as 2024, 23, whatever. This is a new regime, okay? Terrell Buckley brought in a brand new squad, brought in a brand new staff, brought in a brand new attitude, and it showed, right? We knew that Southern, coming off the game against North Carolina Central, they had a little bit of their issues, okay? They had some issues. They had some issues on defense, right? And some of those issues on defense up the middle, and sometimes, even like with tackling, they had some issues. Josh Brown was pretty serviceable in this game. I said that in the opening montage. He's 12 out of 26 passing. That doesn't wow you, but he made the plays that were there. 2 touchdowns passing and 12 rushes on the ground for 87. He has the look of a guy that has potential. Now, that's something that you really can't say that you've seen at Valley at quarterback in a while. Okay, so he's somebody that you have to build on, right? Now, on the other side for Southern, Jalen Woods, for all the reports, he's going to be fine. He's recovering. I can't believe that wasn't a flag if you saw the hit when he was on a quarterback keeper. It was a hit to the helmet. It wasn't reviewed. It was targeting. Just say it for what it is, right? He leaves the game. Cam McCoy comes in and, he leads them. Now, this game should have been put away a couple of times in that late in the third quarter. Trey Holly fumbled the ball. It was a fumble. No, I said it right first time. Mike Franklin fumbles the ball, recovered for a touchdown, right? Right when Southern was on the verge of putting this game pretty much away, right? Then when it's 34-22 later in the game in the fourth quarter, Valley comes up, gets another touchdown, makes it close, right? So say what you want about Southern. You could say that, they have their struggles, but again, they won the game. It wasn't pretty by their standards, maybe by their fan standards. But listen, every team has to get better. And Valley had an entire week to look at the film of the North Carolina Central game and prepare for this. And they came out and they looked prepared. So I'm not surprised at all by the way Valley played. I thought that Southern would kind of flex its muscles a little bit more in this game. And at times you saw it in the run game. But as you know, which is the common theme here in week 1, everybody needs work. So Southern, they're going to definitely get tested next week when they take on Alabama State. And Valley, they're going to get somebody. Somebody going to get picked off by these boys. Maybe a couple of teams. So you keep your eye on Valley, man. Shout out to Valley. Shout out to Valley. They come up short here, but they don't look like the same Valley. All right. Now, I talked about Alabama State, and I'm definitely going to get to that here in a bit. All right. But I got to go here to Alcorn. Whew, boy. This one was a tough one. It was tough to watch, and it was tough to see in the end. Alcorn, for people, first off, for people that want to bury Alcorn, I'm gonna say don't do that just yet. I know how you feel about Coach Cedric Thomas or how you don't feel about him, but just don't bury Alcorn yet. Okay. They were pitiful. I see he says Alcorn is pitiful. They were pitiful on Thursday night. And yeah, you're right. Alcorn has problems. Now that part, This part right here, this one, that's the one. They have problems. And I'm going to tell you what they have problems with. Their problems are, this is a little bit more of what you've seen in the past. Execution. 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 This is a game that Alcorn State dominated in offensive. They dominated things defensively. As you could look, Abram Johnson only threw for 85 yards, right? Northwestern State didn't amass too much. They had just over 200 yards of total offense, okay? It was really, I'm going to just keep it real. Northwestern State's a bad team, man. They didn't win. They hadn't won in over 1,000 days. They're not a very good team. This is a game that's going to be a real bad loss on their record for Alcorn State. What really messed this thing up for them, again, those 3 turnovers. You had the snap that went over the punter's head. He made a bad attempt to try to kick it through the end zone. Ends up getting recovered for a touchdown. And then Jalen Tolbert throws 2 interceptions right there in the end zone. You know, my question for the Braves here is what is their identity, man? They threw, as you can see, Jalen Tolbert threw that ball 44 times. For them to have that 2-headed monster at running back with Sewell and the kid that transferred from Chattanooga, those 2 kids, the way they are with running that football, and you got to rebuild offensive line, you should be trying to run that ball. You should be trying to run the ball first to set up your pass. And speaking of the pass, way too many drop passes. All this didn't necessarily fall on Tolbert's shoulders because those receivers dropped a lot of passes. There were guys that were wide open, drop passes. I mean, found ways to just let this game get away. So Alcorn State, the potential is there, but they didn't look focused and they did not execute. And again, as I said in the case of James Colsey, if you're Cedric Thomas, this is where you're going to really have to prove and show your mettle as a head coach now. Because not only do you have to get this team to make adjustments and get better and be more disciplined, now you got to be able to lift the psyche inside their heads after losing a game against a team you should have buried. So they're going to go play a non-conference game against Alabama A&M next week, and we'll see what it is. We'll see what it is. All right. Now I want to go back to the MEAC, and I want to bring this one up here. South Carolina State. You see, they outgained Wofford. That's not a misprint. 414 to 142. 414 to 142. And you may ask, well, Wild Wayne, how was this even close? Well, if you can believe this, Wofford had the lead 15-9. 15-9 with about 6 minutes remaining. And South Carolina State went on their game-winning touchdown drive. The way this again, South Carolina State just couldn't get out of their own way. They just kept failing to execute. And you see Nico Cavanias, he kicked 3 field goals. A lot of that had to do with just them not being able to finish drives with touchdowns. So they allowed Wofford to hang around. Jaden Whitaker was in his first start. He was a transfer from Gannon. Okay. Gannon D2, he's 6 of 21 for 56 yards. Wofford really just hung around based off of how South Carolina State allowed them to hang around. But the key was that last drive. Billy Atkins, he started this game for South Carolina State at quarterback. But Ryan Stubblefield, he was on the roster last year. And you know who he was because you saw him. He got time in the Celebration Bowl as well. So they both kind of went back and forth as they played. On that last drive, it all got started. They were 3rd and 13 from their own 29. Stubblefield hit Cyrus Ellison with a 29-yard pass. All right. Then he hits Jalen Johnson for 35 on 3rd and 18. And that set up the touchdown to Burgess in in the end zone with 129 remaining. And again, in the case of how things worked with the game with Howard and FAMU, South Carolina State barely hung on with their defense. And really, I won't even say that they hung on with their defense, because Wofford drove that ball right back down the field and got set up to kick a field goal, kick a 49-yard field goal, which they missed. It was nowhere close at the gun. But South Carolina State in this matter, I give them big props, because even when you're not executing to your standards or to the way you thought you should execute, not finishing those drives earlier in the game with touchdowns, but finding a way to put a drive together and get your only touchdown of the night when you needed it with 129 remaining. That's a big thing, and that's a big shout out to Chennis Berry for South Carolina State getting on the board in their home opener down there in Orangeburg. All right. Now, I'm going to go back, and now I'll talk about the Alabama State game. All right. Let's talk about Alabama State here. Now, if you didn't see this game on Thursday, I don't know where you were, but you probably had a chance to go back and look at the stats of this game. And Andrew Body was ridiculous in this game. Now, you can say what you want about how UAB was. Yeah, they were 3-9 last year. Who cares? That was last year. They're still a FBS team that plays in the American Conference. Okay? In the American. So don't give me all that stuff about UAB was sorry. Their defense was terrible. Listen, they still had to execute. Now, y'all know me. I'm an Alabama A&M grad. But I don't care. Game recognized game. I ain't no hater, man. These boys, they had something. They got something working. Now, it's just one game. But on the surface of this thing, 312 yards passing on 18 out of 24, 4 touchdowns. And then you have a 60-yard touchdown run to start the game on your very first drive inside 119 yards. That's some yeoman work, man. That's big stuff. But you look at the receivers. Jalen Jones had 174 and a touchdown. You look at Harold, Greg, and Dejeet. They all had touchdowns. So it was a group effort on offense. Okay, now defensively, they gave up 520 yards of offense. Now, again, Javon Jackson, that running back, he was the legit. Jalen Kittner, he's legit, okay? I mean, 520 yards, yeah, you say, oh, yeah, it's a lot of yards. But again, it's an FBS team, man. So I just have to say, for those, ultimately, what I have to say about this. First off, Andrew Body, you got to find a way to keep him healthy, though. If you keep him healthy, they got chances, man. They got chances to contend if you keep him healthy. Because they can run the ball. Jamari Holtzclaw, he can run the ball. They got receivers. They got a stud of a left tackle. Might get drafted. They got pieces. And you know Eddie Robb, he's a defensive mind. So if he can get his defense together, they got something to work with. Now, you can hate if you want to. Honestly, I think if you're hating, I think you're wasting your time. Because this was legit. Alabama State, if they can keep this thing rolling and keep themselves healthy, by the time they get in the SWAC, we'll see what we get. Now, the game next week is non-conference against Southern. But, hey, next week, that's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to talking about. I'll preview that game for you guys on my show Wednesday. But salute, man. Alabama State was legit, 100%. And yeah, appreciate the respect. Always, brother, always. Hey, everybody, make sure you hit that like button while you're enjoying the show tonight, all right? As I get ready to go to the next game that I have for you. And I want to talk about Michael Vick's opener. This game right here. Now, there was a whole lot of chatter going in from Norfolk State fans. A lot of Norfolk State folks said that. Had some folks get at me on Twitter. Had one guy say, "You are greatly underestimating the Norfolk State mighty green and gold." And he said this because of my pick that I made on Wednesday when I said that Towson would beat Norfolk State 31-14. Well, my pick was a 17-point loss. This was an actual 20-point loss. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about it like that. I'm here to talk about the game itself. Israel Carter started. All right, he looked a little shaky out there as he started. Looked a little overwhelmed at quarterback. And Otto Coons came in and he appeared to run the team. He actually ran the team a lot better. They were moving the ball. He got those receivers involved. They were doing some things. But really, in the end, why I said all the things that I said, why I felt that Towson would win this game showed up. Pete Shinnick is the head coach. He calls the plays. He built West Florida into a D2 power. Okay. Guy knows his offense. And he had a true freshman, Andrew Endorf, starting at quarterback. 187 yards, 3 TDs. Look very comfortable out there. Defensively, Norfolk State, they've got to figure it out. Offensively, they got some pieces to work with. Drayshawn Kendrick is a pretty solid wide receiver, number 5. 11 for 125. But really, what this game was about was Norfolk State. It took a long time for them to get started in this game, man. Long time. Yeah, you're right. They had a lot of penalties. You're right, Dr. Look. They had a lot of penalties. They just couldn't get out of their own way. And by the time they started making those adjustments, they were down 13-0. They started getting this game on their terms. They got it to 13-7. They were in the second half, late in the third quarter. They were down 13-7, had it on their terms. But then Al Wooten and Kamarion Battles on the ground started to get it rolling again. And there was no answers up the middle to stop that run game. When they began to start shutting down that pass in those passing lanes, they couldn't stop the run. So Towson was a little bit too much. Michael Vick, this was an experience for him. And, they get Virginia State coming to their house, so they're going to have to figure it out, man. But first game, he's going to have to learn. They got pieces to work with. They got players, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time, man. Going to take time. Make sure everybody hits that like button now. All right. Now, let's go to Tennessee State. Okay. Now, if you're North Carolina A&T, 2 wins over the last 2 years with Vincent Brown as head coach. Sean Gibbs comes in, takes over. These guys fought. They had a chance to get this win, man. They fought. I saw over Twitter, some of their fans were saying, hey, this was the best that they seen these guys play in 3 seasons. I'd have to agree. Tennessee State, this brand new team, brand new staff with Reggie Barlow. He's going to build some things there. He's going to need some time as well. Jonathan Palmer, if the name's familiar, yeah, he's related to Carson Palmer, guy who used to be the quarterback in the NFL, and Jordan Palmer. He was starting at quarterback. A little bit, had his showed a little bit of nerves in his first start, but he threw for a touchdown. But the difference maker in this game was Kendrick Rhymes. SWAC fans know this guy real well because he was at Southern for 4 years, and he had 2 long touchdown runs. And yeah, with his signature trademark, knock it right out of the park, he did it on both plays. Kendrick Rhymes was was awesome yesterday. That 21 for 174, man. He was the biggest difference maker in this ball game when it counted. Devon Slaughter, he also brought the slack, picked up the slack too, with those 102 yards receiving. Braxton Thomas moved the team pretty good for North Carolina A&T. Like, again, the last couple years, you ain't seen much out of North Carolina A&T. This year, you don't know how many games they're going to get. I didn't think that I thought maybe they'd win one, probably go over. But after seeing these guys play this game yesterday, I have a feeling that they may have a chance to get a couple this year if they can just continue to keep building things. But with fan bases, especially North Carolina A&T's fan base, it's a little bit tough with the expectations. So I will just say, if you're an Aggie fan that's watching this right now or going to watch this, just keep the faith, man. You got to be encouraged by what you saw yesterday. And at the end, they had a 38-yard field goal that had a chance to tie the game and send it into overtime. And it ended up getting blocked, and Tennessee State walks off and takes the John Merritt Classic with a 3-point win. It's awesome stuff. All right. Now we go to this game. And Jackson State fans here in the chat, there's a good amount of you in the chat. I appreciate y'all always in the chat. If there's any Hampton fans in the chat, I appreciate y'all in the chat as well. So this game right here, there's a lot of surprise for a lot of people. I was not, because I had been saying for a few weeks that Hampton was not a slouch. I said that Hampton would come to town and really, really try to show that they're not a slouch, and they didn't. They battled. Now, Jackson State, defensively, very solid. Forced some turnovers, made some plays. They turned Hampton over on downs in the red zone a couple of times. Defensively, they were on the field for a long time. But when it needed to be done, they stepped up and made the plays. He said, the game was hard to watch in person. It was one thing that I'll tell you, another thing I was surprised. Only, what was it, 16 or 18,000 people showed up to this game. I was very surprised by that also. But this game on offense, Jackson State, they had their struggles. Really just in the passing game. Now, Will Wallace, I knew you were going to say this, and I got to say this about this statement here, because you posted this before. Now, had you said this during the week, I would have believed you. But the fact that you and some of the other folks around you said that they were going to completely murder Hampton, for you to post this today, kind of. Now, could Hampton beat the other schools? Maybe. But I don't want to go start saying this kind of stuff, because to some, it makes it look like you're trying to mask what actually really occurred. Okay. Jackson State, they're going to get it together. I said this last night on Tamona's show. It's going to take time. You have new personnel, right? You got Davenport running back. I like the guy. It was pretty cool when he did the backflip after he scored his touchdown. Ahmad Miller was really good for you guys. Now, Ahmad Miller got away with on that long touchdown run that he had. He did the Marshawn Lynch salute. He did the Marshawn Lynch salute, which was kind of funny, but he was really, really solid in this game. 10 rushes, 172 yards. Can't say much about it. But Jacobian Morgan, I said this many times before about him in the passing game. In the Celebration Bowl, that's the best he's ever been in a Jackson State uniform as a passer. Where he's got to be, he's got to get that consistency. He's got to get in sync with that passing, with that passing attack in the receivers. I thought Nathan Rembert really looked like Nathan Rembert. He was really good yesterday. It's going to take a little while. He's got to get in sync with Shamar Savage. You can see Shamar Savage is a beast. Same as Fortillion. Dupree looked good yesterday, but he's got to be able to get in sync with these receivers and get consistent in the passing game. Now, some of this also was to what Stock Talk David says here. Hampton, they caused problems for that offensive line. Okay, yeah, they mixed it up. They mixed it up well. Mixed it up really well. Okay. Yeah, and Janalen Dupree, he did well too. So the thing about it is Isaiah Freeman, he had a couple long runs, did some things. Marshawn Ferguson, pretty good, as a receiver. They did some things. Hampton had a lot of opportunities to really make this thing go the opposite way, though. Those two special teams fumbles, especially when they had the lead 7-0. They took the ball right down the field and went up 7-0, right? But the Jackson State, I will say this. When you've got Travis Terrell injured, you got Jeremiah Williams injured, you're not playing your A game, and you still find a way to grind it out and get the win, it's this old saying, great teams aren't always at their best. They're just great when they have to be. And yesterday, they were great when they needed to be. And when it was time to put the game away, they put the game away. And this is something that they'll learn from. They'll grow. But just like everybody else in America, if you don't play your best, you're susceptible to get beat. Nobody is unbeatable especially when you're not executing. So they'll take out of this a lot. So Adam Spencer says, Wayne, yesterday was the last 5 years of Hampton football. Yeah, you're right, man. Because Hampton last year lost to Morgan State, lost a couple games in the CAA, lost those close games, man. Could have been better. Could have been different. Yesterday, could have been different. But at the end of the day, these guys got to win. Jackson State did. Hampton, you'll take a lot from this. You'll go back home. You'll play Elizabeth City State. You'll get in the win column. You'll get yourselves ready. Jackson State, you're going to play Southern Miss next week. Southern Miss, they look pretty good for a half against Mississippi State at home. And then that SEC muscle start kicking in. But we'll see. We'll talk about that game in earnest on Wednesday. But that is everything that went forward with that game and all the games. All right. So I need everybody tonight. I need everybody to hit that like button. And if you have not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Okay. Now, it's time for me to hand out my ride tokens of the week. Now, as you guys know, if you've been watching the ride for a while, my ride tokens usually go to players that you're on the winning team. But this week, I had to make one exception to my rule. And here's my ride tokens for week 1. Okay. So Andrew Body, Alabama State. 18 out of 24, 312 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 119 yards on the ground. Yeah, I know they lost, but still, I had to give him a ride token. Okay. So he gets my offensive ride token. Okay. Number 1. My second ride token, I'm going to give it to Kendrick Grimes, Tennessee State. 21 rushes, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns. was the difference in the game for these guys ultimately. So Kendrick Grimes, salute, brother. You get my second ride token of the week. My defensive token, I really didn't see an individual player that really stood out that as much. So I decided to give Jackson State and South Carolina State, and I probably could have even given Howard the team for team defense. I give it because Jackson State defensively made a difference by keeping Hampton at bay time and time again. South Carolina State defensively kept them in the game and allowed them to be able to grind out that 16-15 win. So those are the defensive tokens. Then my special teams token, I got to give Matt Connard from Howard. Game-winning field goal on a walk-off, man. Matt Connard, Howard, you get the special teams ride token this week. All right. Now, I did have somebody ask me to talk about this game, so I will. Said the NCCU game. Yes, so I will talk about this game. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I'll talk about this one real quick. And also, like Ladarius said, hit the like and subscribe button, everybody. This game right here, basically, this is what it boiled itself down to for me. Rick Santos, head coach in New Hampshire, and his staff, they had a chance to watch film, man. And it looks like they did it. They came prepared. They shut down Walker Harris. He was erratic. 13 out of 33. And he was scrambling around, trying to make plays, and they made it tough on him. Christian Mosley got 106 yards on the ground, but this was a struggle for North Carolina Central. And even though I picked North Carolina Central to win the game on my show Wednesday, in my preseason predictions, I actually had New Hampshire winning this game. I thought North Carolina Central, based off of the way they played in week 1, I thought that they would carry that momentum into a home opener and go up against New Hampshire, who was still trying to figure some things out. Matt Vezza is a first-year starter. Again, as when I talked about the Towson game earlier, Matt Vezza looked like a seasoned vet out there. 10 for 17, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he also ran the ball. So this was a case of Rick Santos having his Wildcats prepared. And they were strong on the defense, and they executed on offense. Now, if you're North Carolina Central, this is not a cause to panic or anything like that. Some of these early season losses can be helpful for you. Maybe, just maybe, you needed something to pull you back and just say, hey, we need to get ourselves refocused. Maybe you went through the entire week where people patting you on the back, telling you how good you really were down there in Atlanta. Who knows? When I get on the MEAC coaches call in the morning, because they're having it tomorrow, I'm going to be curious to see what Coach Trey Oliver's comments are. I'll have a couple questions for him. But really, to me, this really was more about what Rick Santos and his group at New Hampshire did versus what North Carolina Central didn't do. They were prepared, and it showed. And what it really gets itself boiled down to now is, you got to really be able to bring it. Got to be able to bring it. And North Carolina Central, they'll still be fine. I don't, this doesn't change my impression of who they are. But this is, as you would say, this is a speed bump. And this is something that they're going to have to go back, look at the film, do a lot of things to get themselves together. He said, Coach Oliver isn't making excuses. Yeah, no, he's not. He's not. Coach Oliver, he'll tell you just like it is. If you wasn't any good, he'll tell you wasn't any good. If he tell you that we need to execute, he'll tell you we need to execute. So he definitely was going to do that. He would not be crying like Michael Vick. He said Vick was crying. Oh, man. I'm going to leave that one alone. But North Carolina Central, they're going to go play Old Dominion. So That's an FBS game that they're going to play next week. But North Carolina Central, they'll be fine. But what you got to do, Walker Harris, got to go back and watch the film, man. Got to go back and watch the film. Got to be better than that. 13 out of 33. But they'll be just fine. All right. So those were all of the games that I really, well, one more I want to bring up. I want to also say one more time, shout out here to Deshaun Jackson and his group. Because these boys battled in this game. If you didn't see this game Thursday, these boys were battling. Just when you thought Delaware, you would say, oh, yeah, Delaware's going to pull away now. Delaware State will find a way to make a play. Marquise Gillis is a stud in the making at running back. 17 for 123 on the ground, and he had a receiving touchdown. He was legit, man. Caden Bennett, he threw a bad interception that kind of slowed the momentum, but he's going to be just fine too. They got speed at the skill positions, man. Now, defensively, I thought that would have been where they would struggle. Defensively, they actually stayed in this game, man. They bowled up at times and they made it tough on the Delaware Blue Hens. But Nick Minicucci, he was pretty good, man. Minicucci was solid. He made plays when he needed to make them, and he really needed to make them because Delaware State was right there on the doorstep with him. 35-17, man, in a game that was actually a lot closer than what this score said. It said, what? Will the MEAC be interesting this year? Yes, it will. Whitley, yes, it will. It will be interesting. I'm here to tell you. And said, yeah, their D-line will be nasty. Listen, for Delaware State, just like I said, for all the other squads, just give them time, man. Give them time to build it. So they're going to go home and they're going to play Albany. And Albany yesterday, they played at Iowa. All right. So they're going to get a chance to play Albany. And that's a winnable game for those guys. I'll talk about that on Wednesday. But Delaware State, if you didn't really think that they were going to be any good, this just in, they got a chance. And Deshaun Jackson did not look overwhelmed at all in his opener. Looked the part. Clinton Portis, running back coach, looked the part. Defensive coordinating, defensive staff, looked the part. And they said, we're not satisfied. This is not a moral victory to lose just 35-17. They actually really felt like they missed some opportunities to win this game. And so I will say this. If you're a SWAC person that doesn't watch the MEAC, you need to. If you're a MEAC person that doesn't watch the SWAC, you need to. Everybody watch everything, man. A lot of these games that you're going to see here in a second that I'm going to talk about, you're going to see where they're accessible. All right, as I go right on into next week. So I've handed out my ride tokens. I've gone through the schedule. I've gone through all the games. We've talked about it. We've recapped them. Things have been great. All right. Next week, this is the SWAC slate of games. So the HBCU Go game of the week will be my squad, Alabama A&M. We host Alcorn. That's our Lewis Cruz Classic. So we got a night game, and that is a non-conference SWAC game. Okay. On ESPN Plus, you've got Jackson State going to Hattiesburg to take on Southern Miss. All right. So we'll see that game on ESPN Plus. The SWAC TV game this week, you've got the home opener for Coach Tremaine Jackson and Prairie View. They're going to take on UT Rio Grande Valley. This is going to be their second ever game as an FCS opponent or FCS team, UT Rio Grande. So they're going to come to Prairie View in their home opener. So that'll be on SWAC TV. Non-conference game in ESPN Plus down there in Baton Rouge for Alabama State. Andrew Body gonna bring his show to Baton Rouge. You're gonna see what they got cooking down there with that big crowd down there in A.W. Mumford Stadium. Southern. That should be a nice crowd down there in Baton Rouge. ESPN Plus on Saturday night. FAMU, gonna pick up the pieces this week, but it's not gonna get easier as they hit the road, as they go to Boca Raton to take on Florida Atlantic. That'll be on ESPN Plus. Then you got Valley. Valley's gonna go play Tarleton State. Tarleton State pulled an upset in overtime against Army, and Army won the American Conference last year. Good luck, Valley, but Valley, they definitely showed you that they got something to work with. So that'll be on ESPN Plus. Texas Southern, they're going to try to pick up the pieces against Cal next week on the road, ESPN Plus. There wasn't any TV listed for this game. UAPB is going to go play Central Arkansas. Then on Big Ten Network, boy, Grambling. Boy, this is going to be tough, but hey, at least you get $1 million, y'all. They're going to go play, which will be number 1 Ohio State, coming off their big win of Texas yesterday. Big Ten Network in the afternoon. Bethune-Cookman, they're going to go play Miami on the road. That'll also be on ESPN Plus. And then also rounding out the slate here, you got the MEAC games. South Carolina stays in state. South Carolina State stays in state. They go play South Carolina. All these MEAC games will be on ESPN Plus. Morgan State is going to play in the city against Towson. So to just go right across Baltimore, not a long trip to take on Towson. You've got North Carolina Central. They're going to go play Old Dominion. Albany, as I said before, they're going to play the home opener there in they're at Delaware State. Howard, they're going to hit the road and go to Philadelphia playing the Link against Temple. And then you've got another opportunity for Michael Vick at home as they got D2 CIAA Virginia State coming to Norfolk. And then you got Tennessee State. They're going to welcome in defending FCS champion North Dakota State. That'll also be on ESPN Plus. That's Elizabeth City State. They're going to go play at Hampton. And then rounding out the CAA slate of our HBCU games, also on ESPN Plus, you got North Carolina A&T. They will be at UCF in Orlando. Is everything that I have for you tonight. I appreciate everybody that came on here and brought the energy. I appreciate everybody that's been here in the comments. My next show with you will be my wild picks and predictions coming up on Wednesday at 7:00 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. I will be previewing all of the games for week number 2 and also making my predictions. So make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe and share the show with others, y'all. And Miss Whitley, thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate you. Appreciate your energy also. Just tell some others about the show that may not have seen this here on Labor Day weekend. Appreciate y'all, and say, okay, I'll be back. I appreciate you, Miss Amanda, coming on out watching. And appreciate you, Ms. Mac, because you one of my big supporters. I always appreciate you. So everybody, I appreciate everybody for joining me tonight on the ride. Week 1 recap here on Sunday. We'll be back Wednesday at 7 with Wild Picks. God bless everybody. Be safe.
Thank you for joining us on the ride with Wild Wayne Cartwright. As you exit the ride, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit the like button, and catch up on all of our prior episodes. Until next time, God bless.